Hi there, my writing friends. One of the things I don't think we talk about enough in the writing world is how surprisingly difficult it can be to write your second book. Now, you would think, logically, that once you've written one book, the next one should be easier. You've already proven to yourself that you can finish a manuscript. You know how long it takes. You know what the messy middle looks like and feels like. And you know you can get to the end, which is actually a really empowering feeling. So, surely, when you come to write your book too, you should feel a lot more confident and the whole process should be a lot more straightforward. And yet, for so many writers, especially those writing a series, and please do, you know, I'm a big proponent for that, but the book too just feels heavier. It's not impossible, there's nothing disastrous about it. It just feels, ugh, I can't think of a word to describe that. When you write your first book, there's almost like it's all fresh, it's all new. You're discovering everything for the first time. Your characters feel amazing. Your world is unfolding on the page. And you're at this point, you're not necessarily thinking about sales or branding or long-term plans or anything else like that. You are just writing because you want to tell the story. And there's a lot of freedom in that. You get to explore, you get to have fun with it. And I say that time and time again. Your writing should be fun. However, once book one is finished, and especially once it's published, something kind of shifts because all of a sudden there are expectations. And sometimes the loudest expectations aren't coming from your readers, they're coming from you. You sit down to write book two and you're aware that you've already done this once. Fine, that's cool. Your first book now exists in the world. People have read it. Hopefully, they've loved it. They may be waiting for the next one. And if you've written a really good book one, your readers will find a way to get in touch and let you know they want book two. Even if it's only a handful of people that are waiting, that awareness changes the energy around your second book. Because instead of writing in a bubble, you kind of get the sensation that you're writing with a sense of being observed. And I did do a video not so long ago about why writers can't write when people are watching. It can be really unsettling. You might start because you're going to start comparing things. You're going to start asking yourself whether the second story is as strong as the first one, whether the characters are as engaging as they were in the first book, whether the plot is as gripping enough. You might even find yourself trying to outdo your previous work rather than just simply focusing on telling the best story you can. And that internal pressure can drain some of the joy. Your first book was like discovering a magical land. Your second book feels like an on-stage performance, and that can be terrifying. There's also a question of excitement. Book one is full of novelty. Everything feels new when you write your first book. You're exploring your setting, your magic system, your relationships, your twists, your turns, your plots, your characters. You don't know how it's all going to unfold. And that mystery, that excitement, I've talked about it before, where you want to know what happens next, that keeps you going through the book. But by the time you've reached book two, particularly if you're writing a series, you already know your world. So you have more of an understanding about the rules, and the sparkly newness is now more familiar. Now, familiar is comforting, but it doesn't generate the same buzz of excitement. So instead of thinking, well, what happens next, which is where your excitement isn't initially, you're more likely to be thinking, how do I deepen this? How do I make this feel fresh without contradicting what you've already established? Because deepening a world takes a lot more effort than discovering it. And of course, if you're writing a series, the other layer of complexity is now you have to think about continuity as well. You can't just invent things off the top of your head without checking what you've already written. You have to remember details, character histories, timelines, who knows which secrets, what things are still unresolved. And so it doesn't feel quite as creative anymore. It gets quite technical. And that accountability, along with the fear of getting it wrong, especially if you're someone who enjoys just writing, you're a pantser, you just write by instinct. Book one allows you to follow the story wherever you wanted it to go. Book two is like adding on to an existing picture without pulling anything loose. On top of that, there's a subtle but very real shift in identity that happens between finishing book one and starting book two. As a new writer, when you write your first book, you can still tell yourself that, you're trying this out. You're experimenting. You're looking to see what happens. With the second book, suddenly, especially if it's a part of a series, you're no longer just writing that book. You're starting to develop a body of work. You're starting to think in terms of readership and consistency and all those long-term plans for a writing career. Whether you admit it or not, you do become aware that this is more than a one-off achievement and that it actually could be a career. And that awareness, again, can change everything. When you start to see writing as a potential career rather than just a single project that you've had a really good time with, the stakes feel different. You start thinking about release schedules and covers, and you're also probably getting reader feedback at this point. So you've also got reader expectations to factor into this as well. And you might start to wonder whether you can sustain your level of output. You might start to question whether you're disciplined enough, organized enough, or just plain gutsy enough to just keep going. It's no longer about just finishing that first book. When you come to writing your second book, you're starting to build something that lasts. And for many writers, particularly those who might come to fiction later in life, like I did, that realization can feel both thrilling and completely intimidating. On the one hand, I know for myself, when I finished my first book, it was really exciting to think, that this passion could grow into something, meaningful and long-term. But on the other hand, it also requires responsibility and consistency, patience, and things like that. And it means showing up even when you don't feel like it. And that brings us to that aspect of comparison, which is why your book two could feel harder. With your first book, you've got nothing personal you can compare it with. And now you do. You might reread a passage from your first book and think, well, was this stronger? Or did this couple have better chemistry? You might find yourself measuring every scene against what you've already achieved. But comparison, and I say this quite often too, comparison is the thief of joy. It can also sap your confidence, because what it means is instead of allowing yourself to immerse yourself in your current story, you're too busy looking over your shoulder at the previous one. And that splits your focus, and it makes the work feel a lot more strained and difficult than it needs to be. A can't talk about this without talking about the impact of feedback as well. I know when I finished my first book, and I've talked about it a million times on this channel, but I never got that book edited. And I was a person who was born in England, living in New Zealand, writing about characters that were living in America. As you can imagine, I got so many words for completely regular things wrong. And I have reviews about it. There was a lot of positive reviews on that first book about how the characters were really good and the plot line was really good and everything else. But there was also those reviews about, you know, you shouldn't use this word, you should use that word and all this sort of thing. And the thing is that I was quite lucky because by the time I put my first book out, my second book was already finished. I actually had these issues when I got to my third book. But it really, when you get feedback, and so much of the feedback from my first book was really positive, but no matter what sort of feedback you get, it will influence the way you approach your next book. You will probably try to avoid repeating mistakes. You might attempt to write safer. You might start second guessing those choices that you made because you're already thinking about how it will be seen as a, you know, from the reader's side of things. And that can really slow down your creative flow. But the thing you need to remember is this. The fact is that while book 2 might feel harder, it doesn't mean you've lost your ability to write it. It doesn't mean you're a one-book wonder. It doesn't mean your creativity is gone. It simply means that you're starting to move from hobby level thinking into more professional level thinking. Your book 1 is really important because it teaches you that you can finish a book, and you have no idea how important that is, but it really is. If you can type those words at the end of your book 1, you have achieved something that so few people actually do. But what book 2 teaches you is that you can keep doing it. And those are very different skills. Finishing something once is a huge achievement. Sustaining it over multiple books is a lot more about discipline and building habits and developing systems and learning how to separate your creative voice from your inner critic. And we will definitely do a video on that one day. It's about understanding that not every writing day will feel magical, and that is perfectly normal. It's a bit like having a job, except you're your own boss. In many ways, the second book is where you truly become a writer, not just someone who wrote a book. It's where your consistency starts to matter more than the inspiration. It's where you as an author can start to trust that your excitement will be big one day and not the next, but that you just keep going. Yes, it's harder. Yes, you have to be more aware about it. You have to have more intention and a bit more emotional resilience, especially if you are getting reviews. But it is also where something really amazing starts to happen, because when you push through book 2 and you learn how to manage your expectations and your quiet, that's business with the comparison, and balancing your creativity with the awareness that you're actually building a career, you are laying a foundation for something sustainable. You are proving to yourself that it isn't a fluke. This wasn't a one-time burst of motivation. It's a craft you're willing to develop into a career. So even if you're currently struggling with your second book and wondering why it doesn't feel as light and joyful as the first, please know this is also very common. It doesn't mean you've lost your spark. It just means that spark is evolving into something steadier. The excitement might not be quite as great, but it does become more deeper and more grounded. And that's kind of excitement. The one that starts to be built on experience and commitment is far more sustainable in the long run. Book 2 isn't about just writing another story. It is the moment that you make that step from I wrote a book into I am building a writing life. And that is a really powerful place to be. So what do you think, my friends? Are you at the second book stage? Are you at the third, fourth, fifth, or sixth book stage? Or are you still writing your first book and now I've put you off from writing a second book? I really hope I haven't. But there is definitely a shift of thinking between how you feel when you write your first book and how you feel when you continue on from that. And that difference is the difference between writing a book and building an author career. And yeah, I would give that tip. Actually, as I say, I wrote my second book before I published my first. So no matter what, so I didn't kind of have that, but then I was writing book 3 of the Cloverleaf Pack series when my first book came out. And yeah, I've got to admit there's some days there where my word count really suffered, especially when the negative reviews came in. But that's all part of it. It's all part of consistency. It's all part about keeping going. It's all part of just accepting that everybody's entitled to their opinion. And you just keep doing what brings you joy, because 12 years later, and we don't even want to know how many books that is, but it's a lot. I still feel that joy. As I say, my mind is currently thinking about the book I'm writing at the moment, which makes all this very interesting, but it's all right. Saturdays is video days, so here we go. But what do you think? What do you know, have you noticed any differences between writing your first book and writing your second? Do you think it gets easier when you get into book 3? Or do you find that reader expectations or reader comments, reviews, and things like that, do they impact your writing once you're writing another book? What is your experience with that, and how did you deal with it? Or is it something that you think I should make a video on? Let me know in the comments below. In the meantime, I do long form content on Mondays and Thursdays, and I also do an author reading of my work on Saturdays. But as I've said 100 times, I am doing that to increase my watch time. So please don't feel obligated to listen to that one. As I know, my genre doesn't suit all people, but my readers can always hop on Saturdays and listen to me reading my own work. And that is honestly all it is. So I do want to try and get back onto the partner program if I can, and watch time is a really hard thing to get. So I truly appreciate you if you have made it this far. And yeah, I answer every comment, no matter what it is. Even if you hated this, put it in the comments below, because I'll still answer it. It's still engagement. But in the meantime, please keep writing, my friends. Remember, writing is supposed to be fun, and it can be fun whether you're writing your first book, your second book, or your roughly 140th book like I am at the moment. But yeah, we will catch up with you soon, and I have no idea what the next video will be about, but I guess we'll find out when we get there. And until then, keep writing, my friends, and thank you for making it this far. Bye.